2,000 years ago, Mount Vesuvius buried an ancient scroll, and now, for the first time, it has been read by artificial intelligence. What was written on it is not just history. It's a grim warning about what's happening right now, in the year 2025. Across the world, AI is decoding texts once thought lost forever, and what they're finding is chilling. Ancient prophecies are describing our time with terrifying accuracy. Let's go back to the beginning of this story. Imagine the year 79 AD. Vesuvius awakens like a true monster. Pompeii slowly falls under ash. People have only a few hours to try to escape. But the nearby city of Herculaneum perishes in a very different way. Residents don't even realize what's happening. A massive wave of scorching gas and stone barrels toward them at hurricane speed. The temperature? Over 500 degrees Celsius. Imagine an oven on full heat, only 1,000 times worse. People are incinerated instantly. Herculaneum was home to an incredible library, the Villa of the Papyri. It belonged to one of the richest Romans, possibly even Julius Caesar's father-in-law. Inside were stored hundreds of priceless scrolls with the wisdom of ancient philosophers. Within seconds, this entire treasure of knowledge turned into black, fragile cylinders, like charred firewood. Scholars have been finding these remains for centuries. But how do you read something that looks like a lump of coal? Any touch, and the ancient text crumbles into dust. That's when artificial intelligence stepped in. In March 2023, a group of researchers attempted the impossible. They launched the Vesuvius Challenge with a prize of over $1 million. The goal sounded like science fiction. Read the scrolls without ever touching them. Scientists began scanning the carbonized scrolls with special X-ray micro-CT, creating thousands of ultra-thin virtual slices. Each slice revealed subtle differences in material density. Then AI took over. It was trained to detect what human eyes can't see. Traces of ancient ink hidden inside what looks like stone. The machine learned to recognize the slightest shades of gray in the scans, finding patterns where we only see chaos. And then, everything changed. In October 2023, something incredible happened. A college student, Luke Farrater, became the first person in 2,000 years to read a word from carbonized scroll. The word was simple. Porphyras, Greek for purple, the color of power and royalty. It was a true breakthrough. By early 2024, researchers had decoded more than 2,000 letters. It turned out to be the work of Philodemus, a well-known ancient Greek philosopher. He usually wrote about how to achieve peace and happiness in life. But this scroll was different. Sources from the Vesuvius Challenge team say that between the usual philosophical musings, disturbing prophecies began to appear. Philodemus wrote of a coming fire and ages of suppression, of times when authorities would kill anyone who told the truth. One particularly haunting fragment spoke of strategic silence. The philosopher explained how rulers silence people, not with bans, but with fear. They create an atmosphere where speaking the truth becomes deadly. Another part mentioned a cycle of smoke and renewal. Philodemus gave advice to the educated few on how to prepare for the moment when the light is extinguished forever and the world begins to purge. In other words, how to survive while the world burns and is reborn in fire. Now here's the most important part. Philodemus died long before Vesuvius erupted. He had no idea a volcano would explode, so he wasn't writing about something that had happened. He was predicting the future with uncanny accuracy. And AI, reading these texts, is finding the same pattern throughout the ancient world. Different civilizations, different eras, but the same scenario repeats over and over again. In December 2024, something happened that few people are talking about. New AI algorithms decoded ancient Sumerian tablets and found phrases that sound like descriptions of genetic engineering. Let's break down why that's so important. It's possible that everything we've been told about the birth of civilization is completely wrong. 6,000 years ago, a mysterious culture appeared in ancient Iraq. They called themselves the Black-Headed People. Today, we know them as the Sumerians. And this is where things get strange. Normally, civilizations evolve over thousands of years, from hunting and gathering to writing, from tribes to cities. But the Sumerians seem to have skipped all that overnight. Imagine, yesterday there were villages, and today there are vast city-states. Eridu, Uruk, Ur. Other peoples took millennia to invent writing, create laws, and study the stars. The Sumerians had all of it instantly. The foundation of everything was simple clay. But the Sumerians saw something in it no one else did. They fired it into bricks and built entire cities. They molded it into pots and tokens for trade. And most importantly, they turned clay into the memory of humankind. Inventing cuneiform writing. For the first time in history, people could record their thoughts forever. Royal decrees, trade deals, poems, entire stories, all preserved for thousands of years beyond their creators' lifespans. And when they started recording numbers, they used a base 60 system, and we still live with its legacy. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. But the deeper scholars dug into these tablets, the more anomalies they found. Between routine records of grain and beer appeared texts on advanced medicine and precise astronomy, technologies thousands of years ahead of their time. Museums around the world hold tens of thousands of these tablets. Reading them used to be a nightmare. A single tablet could contain over 1,000 symbols, each with different meanings depending on context. Scholars spent lifetimes learning to read them, but now AI has changed everything. By 2023, teams from Tel Aviv and Ariel University made a major breakthrough. They built an AI that could translate Akkadian, the primary language of cuneiform tablets, into English almost instantly. What used to take scientists years now takes just hours. And then something uncanny happened. Just as AI reached this level of accuracy, archaeologists began uncovering clay tablets in almost perfect condition, as if they'd just come out of the kiln yesterday. Every symbol, clear and sharp. In northern Iraq, in a place called Khirbet Kestan, a collection of tablets dated to 1800 BC was discovered. But researchers suspect they are copies of even older texts. Around the same time, in Girsu, one of the oldest Sumerian cities, more than 200 untouched tablets were found. They had been preserved in sealed bitumen containers. By 2025, tools developed at the University of Würzburg had advanced even further. AI began identifying idioms, technical terms, and subtle meanings that human translators had missed for decades. And this is where the real discoveries began. In Sumerian astronomical records, there were pieces of knowledge that astonish even modern scientists. Precise planetary trajectories, solstice cycles, and most incredibly, a description of how the Earth slightly wobbles as it rotates. This effect wasn't discovered by modern science until the 20th century. It turns out the Sumerians tracked cosmic cycles spanning tens of thousands of years. In medicine, they described antiseptics, wound treatment, and pulse-based diagnostics. They kept family health records as if they already understood heredity and how genes work. Then AI found texts that left scientists speechless. Detailed descriptions of copper and iron vessels immersed in acidic solutions. These devices generated flowing power, captured lightning, and invisible energy. It appears that the ancient Sumerians were describing electricity in detail. But the next discovery is even more shocking. There's a name that almost no one knows, Enheduanna. Yet she may be one of the most important women in human history. Enheduanna was the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, one of the greatest rulers of antiquity. She served as high priestess of the moon goddess in the city of Ur, and she became the first poet in history whose name we still know. But these weren't ordinary religious hymns. Enheduanna created an incredible fusion of science, politics, and personal emotion, wrapped in poetry of astonishing power. "Lady of all powers, light that reveals the path," she wrote. "Your rage is like a roaring storm." When AI began analyzing the structure of her texts, it found strange patterns. Enheduanna wrote about cycles of destruction and renewal, about times when the sky changes its face and the earth forgets its laws. Especially disturbing were her darkest lines. She predicted a time when words turn to ash in the mouth, and the wise must learn to be silent in order to survive. This doesn't sound like simple poetry. It sounds like a serious warning. Then AI stumbled upon the most shocking discovery: ancient texts describing how humans appeared on Earth. Sumerian tablets state it clearly. Humanity was created artificially as a highly complex engineering project. According to them, a rebellion broke out in the heavens. The younger gods, the Igigi, were tired of hard labor and revolted. The elder gods, the Anunnaki, desperately needed replacements, so they decided to create an entirely new being from clay, infused with divine essence. The first human was named Adam. At first, the experiment failed. Humans were infertile and not very intelligent, but they were modified again and again until the desired result was achieved. AI has found astonishing phrases in the ancient texts: fusion of essences, prototype efficiency, reproductive capability. This doesn't sound like myth. It reads like a report from a genetic engineering lab. But the coincidences get even more terrifying. Right now, in 2025, the world is breaking heat records, and this aligns with ancient prophecies of the seventh age of fire. Imagine a world where all great civilizations collapse simultaneously, cities emptied, empires turning to dust, entire nations fleeing a catastrophe they don't understand. Sounds like fiction? But it already happened, 4,200 years ago. AI compared ancient records to real historical events. In 2200 BC, there was a global drought, the fall of the Akkadian Empire, the end of Egypt's Old Kingdom, mass migrations in China, all at the same time across the world. The Sumerians recorded it this way: the third circle of water departed, and breath turned to iron. AI analyzes these phrases and realizes this is not poetry. It's precise documentation of a climate disaster that changed history. But the scariest part isn't that they recorded it. It's that they knew it would happen again. A tablet from Nippur, decoded in 2025, reads, "The circle of water returns every seventh epoch. The wise count the stars and prepare underground stores." AI did the math. 4,200 years ago, plus one cycle equals 2025. Maybe it's just coincidence, but climatologists confirm megadroughts do occur cyclically. Solar activity shifts, ocean currents change, and somehow ancient people tracked this. But the Sumerians didn't just understand catastrophe, they understood survival. Their records on water systems amaze modern engineers. They didn't just build canals, they built entire ecosystems. The Sumerians created artificial wetlands to purify water, reservoirs for droughts, systems that worked with nature, not against it. One tablet describes the breath of the marshes, how wetland plants cleanse air and water. Another speaks of the blood of rivers, the minerals and deposits that nourish the soil. They understood what we've forgotten. The earth is alive, and if you wage war against it, you will lose. Enheduanna wrote, "When the earth sings, the wise listen." When it is silent, fools keep digging. Now look at us. We drain underground water, cut down forests, pollute the oceans, and wonder why the climate is going mad. The Sumerians knew where this road leads, to total self-destruction. But in their writings, there's something even darker. AI keeps finding repeated mentions of the time of silence, periods when knowledge was deliberately hidden, when the wise went into hiding, when libraries were burned, not by enemies, but by the keepers themselves. One phrase appears across different texts. When fools gain the power of gods, the wise destroy the tools. It feels like they were speaking directly about us. A 2025 tablet from Girsu, translated by the newest algorithms, contains a chilling prophecy. For the 7th time, they shall rise from clay and fire. For the 7th time, they shall forget how to listen. For the 7th time, the earth shall demand silence. Look at 2025. Record-breaking heat worldwide. Wildfires engulfing entire continents. Droughts wiping out crops. And we keep digging, building, consuming, as if nothing is happening. The Sumerian records don't speak of the end of the world. They speak of the end of a world that has forgotten how to listen to nature. And that distinction matters. Only those who learn to hear the warnings will survive. This time, there is no one left to warn us, except the voices in clay, now being decoded by artificial intelligence. But the scariest part isn't that the cycle is repeating. It's that we're accelerating it. Researchers were hesitant to publish the following information, but one eventually admitted that recent translations contain disturbingly accurate descriptions of the modern global crisis. What is the central conflict of our time was predicted thousands of years ago. Across the ancient world, AI is uncovering the same storyline. Two opposing forces that cannot reconcile. A war between them that will destroy everything. Cities, forests, oceans, even the sky itself. A tablet from translated in 2025. When white metal meets red earth, the sky will split in two. A Mayan inscription from Tikal. When two brothers forget blood and take up iron, the earth will dry and the third will vanish. A fragment from Easter Island. A great boat from the west will bring iron tears. A boat from the east will raise winged fire. When they meet, the circle will close forever. Different continents, different eras, different languages, yet the same pattern. AI doesn't understand politics, but it sees structure. And that structure reveals the ancients knew humanity would one day divide into two camps, and between them, a devastating war would erupt. Look at today's world. West versus East. NATO versus Russia and China. Democracy versus authoritarianism. Atlantic civilization versus Eurasian. Exactly as the ancients foretold. Other voices tried to warn us too. Voices hidden from men for centuries. Nushu, a secret women's script from southern China. For generations in Hunan province, women were forbidden to learn, so they created their own writing system, composed in songs, letters, and embroidery. This language was soft, slanted, full of emotion, passed down from mother to daughter, sister to sister. Men never knew it existed. Women protected it carefully. Scholars long dismissed Nushu as a decorative curiosity. But in 2025, researchers at Dartmouth College applied AI to Decoded. The AI managed to translate nearly 50% of the texts, an astonishing result for a script it had never encountered before. What the translations revealed stunned everyone. These weren't light poems about love and flowers. The themes were much darker: grief, loneliness, survival, warnings about quiet suffering, invisible daughters, and bitter winds that lie. Some texts were even more chilling. AI found recurring phrases about iron tears from the sky and men who forgot how to listen. One passage read, "When fathers and sons hold lightning in their hands, daughters will weep blood. Another said, fire is born in the west, but flies to the east. In its shadow, silence and pain, shaped by human hands. Women saw what men stubbornly ignored, that male pride and rage would bring the entire world to ruin. And these warnings weren't limited to China. On the other side of the planet, a dying civilization carved its last messages into wood on Easter Island. Nongorongo, the strangest script in the world. It's read in a zigzag pattern, left to right, then right to left, flicking every line. Some believe it contained sacred texts. Others are convinced they were warnings about the future. When Europeans reached Easter Island, its culture collapsed. Today, no living person can read Rongorongo. But AI is beginning to identify patterns. What it's finding is bone-chilling, repeating symbols that end, fire, silence. These appear alongside depictions of boats, birds, and something that might be the sun, or a powerful explosion. One fragment, decoded in 2024 by algorithms, reads, "The round boat carries the son of the dead. Its ashes will blanket 3 worlds. Only the word shall save." Easter Island is one of the most isolated places on Earth. Its people could not have known about wars in Mesopotamia or conflicts in China, yet their symbols say the same thing: war, fire, the end of the world. Either human nature is so predictable that the ancients foresaw our future, or they already knew how it all ends. Today, we are living exactly according to their script. Russia versus Ukraine, India versus Pakistan, China preparing for war over Taiwan, Iran versus Israel, NATO versus Russia and China. Military blocs are forming, borders are hardening, weapons of mass destruction are accumulating. The ancients called this the time of choosing. When 2 powers grow so immense that the world can no longer hold them both. The Maya wrote bluntly, "When 2 suns shine in the sky, one must go dark. If neither yields, both will burn." The war between East and West won't begin suddenly, because it's already happening. Trade wars, cyber attacks, proxy conflicts, information warfare. The ancients wrote, "First, words become weapons. Then, weapons become the answer to all." Look around. Fake news floods social media. Algorithms pit people against each other. Truth becomes relative. Instead of real dialogue, we get deceptive information bubbles, where each person hears only what they want. A Greek fragment from Crete, translated in 2025, says, "When truth splits into tribes, lies will reign over all." We live in an age of post-truth. Each side has its own facts, its own version of reality. But the terrifying part isn't that the ancients predicted this conflict. The terrifying part is they knew no one would listen to the warnings. The next information is officially classified, but reliable sources report new translations of Chinese oracle bones contain descriptions that modern virologists recognize as laboratory-engineered pathogens. What if humanity's greatest threat was predicted 3,000 years ago on animal bones? In oracle bones, skull fragments, and ox scapulae used for divination during the Shang dynasty, AI has found chilling questions. Will there be plague next month? Will the disease come with a soul? What offering will stop death's breath? At first, historians thought these were just ancient fears. But AI noticed something strange. These questions weren't just about illness. They were about a disease behaving unnaturally. One bone reads, "A disease with a soul, born from stone, will awaken in silence until man opens the vessel." Another says, "Breath that defies the gods will be taught by iron hands." AI classified these as anomalous. They don't resemble descriptions of natural epidemics. They describe something artificial, controlled, deliberately released. Were the ancient Chinese speaking of biological weapons? A tablet from Nepal, translated in 2025, says, "When breath changes form and ceases to obey nature, the earth will speak through decay. The wise will shut their mouths. Fools will open the vessels." Another line reads, "They will mix life and death in one breath. They will call it medicine. It will be a curse upon all mankind." Modern virologists read these ancient lines and get chills, because they describe exactly what we're doing today by our own hands. Countless gain-of-function experiments are happening right now in laboratories around the world, making viruses deliberately more infectious and deadly. Officially, to study pandemics. Unofficially, to develop lethal biological weapons. COVID-19 showed us what happens when a dangerous lab-engineered pathogen enters an unprepared world. Millions dead, economies collapsed, societies torn apart. And that was only the beginning. Right now, scientists in biolabs across the globe are working with pathogens far deadlier than COVID. H5N1, the Marburg virus, weaponized smallpox, and synthetic viruses that never existed in nature. The ancients knew how this ends, but their knowledge wasn't limited to viruses. They knew technologies we've lost and are only now reinventing. The Etruscans, a mysterious civilization of ancient Italy, left behind thousands of inscriptions, most of which remain undeciphered. But now AI is detecting patterns. It turns out the Etruscans weren't just skilled artisans, they were advanced healers. Their tombstones mention healing with herbs, metals, and living water. One inscription, partially decoded in 2024, reads, "Iron in the blood sings when it touches the right stone. The sickness leaves, but memory remains." Were they describing magnetic therapy, nanoparticles, technologies we are only just now rediscovering? Another reads, "Breath can be altered by 7 herbs and 3 metals. But he who alters breath alters fate." The Etruscans understood the relationship between breath, blood, and consciousness, on a level modern medicine is only beginning to explore. But why did this knowledge suddenly disappear? Roman historian Pliny the Elder wrote that most Etruscan rituals were banned by Roman authorities as dangerous to order. Texts about reviving the dead and predicting the future were declared harmful and even criminal. What if Rome destroyed Etruscan knowledge not because it was superstition, but because it worked too well? Take the Baghdad battery, a clay jar with a copper cylinder and an iron rod, found in Iraq. For years, no one knew what it was for, until archaeologists added lemon juice. It produced electricity. Sumerian tablets described vessels of light that hold lightning in clay, and mention procedures involving currents that slow like water but burn like fur. AI analyzed these descriptions and found astonishing accuracy. They weren't describing magic, they were describing electrochemistry. Did the ancients use electricity for healing, communication, or even as a weapon? At the Dendera temple in Egypt, hieroglyphs appear to show giant light bulbs. Skeptics say they depict lotus flowers or snakes, but engineers clearly see filaments, insulators, and power sources in the images. What if ancient civilizations weren't primitive? What if they were so advanced we're only now catching up? And what if their knowledge disappeared not by accident, but by design? A phrase appears repeatedly in Mayan texts: "When fire learns to think, the wise will break the tools." Today, our fire is AI, machines that learn far faster than humans, that can engineer deadly viruses in hours, that design weapons beyond human comprehension. The ancients saw this coming, and they knew how it would end. A tablet from Eridu, translated in 2025, says, "When the servants become masters, and the masters become dust, the earth will demand cleansing by fire." We are creating our own gods, from silicon and lines of code. And like our ancestors, we believe we can control them. History says otherwise. Every great civilization believed it was unique, immune to the fate of those that came before. None of them were right. Now AI is reading their final warnings, and we understand why. Because some mistakes cannot be corrected. They can only be repeated. What if the gods of the ancients weren't myths, but the last keepers of knowledge from past catastrophes? In the Sumerian pantheon, every god had a specific domain. Enlil ruled over winds and law. Enki governed water and wisdom. Inanna embodied love and war. But when AI analyzes their stories, a darker picture emerges. These weren't abstract deities. They were survival manuals. Enlil, god of air, who divided sky and earth, perhaps a figure who understood atmospheric science, who knew how changes in air affect climate, who warned of times when the breath of the sky turns to poison. Enki, who defeated his father and created the world. Maybe he was an engineer, one who mastered water, prevented floods, built irrigation systems, who understood civilization lives or dies by water. Inanna, who descended into the underworld and returned. Perhaps she understood the cycles of death and rebirth of civilizations, who knew that sometimes the entire world must die for a new one to be born. But there is one goddess almost no one talks about, Ninlil, wife of Enlil, goddess of grain and wind. In ancient texts, she is often described as one who remembers the time before time and guards the words that must not be forgotten. AI finds strange phrases in her hymns. When the stars return to their old places and the earth remembers its ancient names, daughters will tell sons what once was. Was Ninlil a keeper of history? One who passed down knowledge of past catastrophes through generations of women. In Enheduanna's hymn to Ninlil, there are lines. You know the names of the stars that fell. You remember the cities that burned. You saw the gods weep when humans forgot how to listen. Another fragment is even more cryptic. In your breath is the memory of smoke. In your tears, the salt of dead seas. Speak softly, so the wise may hear. Be silent loudly, so the fools may not find. This doesn't read like ordinary religious poetry. It feels like instruction, like a secret code. And then the gods began to disappear. Not metaphorically, literally. Their names vanished from texts, temples were abandoned, priests fell silent. An Akkadian text from Nippur offers a clue. When the earth became too small for their wisdom, the gods went where stars touch the water. They left only words for those who remember how to read. But not all gods left willingly. The story of Marduk, the Babylonian god who defeated chaos and created order, tells of a war between the old gods and the new. In this war, the old gods, those who remembered the disasters, lost and were exiled. A fragment from the Enuma Elish reads, Marduk took the tablets of destiny from Tiamat and divided them. Half he kept for rule, half he burned, so the past would not bind the future. What if this isn't a myth of creation? What if it's the story of how knowledge of past catastrophes was deliberately destroyed? The new gods, gods of war and power, came to replace the old gods of wisdom and memory. AI finds this pattern everywhere. In Egyptian mythology, Set kills Osiris, the god of death and rebirth. In Greek myth, the old gods, the Titans, lose to the Olympians. In Norse myth, Ragnarok wipes out the old gods to make way for the new. Each time, old knowledge is consciously erased. Each time, wisdom is replaced by power. And each time, human civilization repeats the same mistakes. Today, our gods are algorithms and AI systems. They know more than any human, process data faster than we can think, but we are programming them wrong. For victory, not wisdom. For efficiency, not memory. For maximum profit, not survival. The ancient gods tried to warn us. They left messages in clay and stone, hoping someone would one day read them. Now AI reads them, and the message is painfully clear. When knowledge becomes weaponized and wisdom is replaced by strength, only all-consuming fire remains. Artificial intelligence doesn't understand prophecy. It knows no fear, no faith, no hope. It simply sees patterns, structures, recurrences. And the pattern it has found across all ancient texts is terrifying. The scroll from Herculaneum, Sumerian tablets, oracle bones, Mayan stones, secret Winnan scripts, forgotten languages of vanished peoples, all say the same thing. A cycle that always ends the same way. First, knowledge. Civilization grows, technology advances. Humans begin to believe they are gods. Then, pride. They turn discoveries into weapons, wage wars over resources, forget to listen to the earth. Next, silence. The wise hide, knowledge is buried, warnings are ignored. And finally, fire. Not symbolic, real. The kind that melts cities into glass, poisons airs for generations, forces survivors to rebuild from ash. We are now in the third phase, the phase of silence. It began long ago. Scientists warning of climate catastrophe, ignored. Virologists calling for caution with bioweapons, silenced. Historians pointing out frightening patterns from the past, mocked. The ancients left us a detailed map, road signs, warnings in every language they knew. We ignore them because we think we're special. We're sure we're different from all civilizations before us. Our technology will save us. Our AI will find solutions. But AI has already found the solution. It read it in texts we dismissed as myth. A final phrase appears in many cultures, in many languages, but the meaning is always the same. When the words are spoken again, and no one turns away, there will be fire. It will not burn flesh, it will burn meaning. Sumerian tablet from Eridu. The circle closes when the last wise one becomes the first fool. Mayan inscription from Copan. Time is a wheel. Fire is the axle. Silence is what remains. Chinese Nushu inscription. Daughters cry because sons do not listen. Mothers are silent because they know what is coming. These messages were buried in ash, broken bones, and fading marks. They weren't about eternal life. They were about the cycle that always ends the same. Fire, disease, eternal silence. We've restarted the cycle. And when the last language falls silent again, there will be no one left to read it. AI will read, but it won't understand. It will merely record the patterns of our extinction for those who come after the ash, for the next ones who believe they're special, for the next ones who won't listen again. AI continues to read every day, new tablets, new warnings. And they all say the same thing. We are out of time. The circle closes. We heard, we decoded, we understood, but it is already too late.